All right, buckle the fuck up, buttercups, and welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're not tiptoeing through any tulips. We're diving headfirst into the steaming dumpster fire that is the Kamala Harris narrative.
Yeah, no kidding.
You, our beloved bunch of news junkies, sent us a glorious gaggle of garbage articles from places that think they're smart, like Newsweek, the intellectual equivalent of a soggy biscuit in the Express Tribune, YouTube rabbit holes, and even some brain-dead AI trying to crack jokes.
A real treasure trove.
Our mission, should you choose to accept it, you already did, you're listening, is to wade through this swamp of opinions and extract the stinkiest nuggets about what passes for public perception of the Veep. Let's cut the crap and get started.
Precisely. What we have here is like a real mixed bag. You've got whiny complaints about the price of your damn groceries.
Waste.
Conspiracy theories about edited interviews and, the usual hot takes on whether she's being real or just putting on some kind of act. It's a window into how people react, often with maximum fury, to someone in power.
Fury is right. Let's kick off with something guaranteed to get everyone's blood boiling. The goddamn economy. Shelley Moore Capito, bless her conservative little heart, went on Forbes Breaking News to whine about Kamala's opportunity economy spiel.
Yes, the opportunity economy.
Apparently, while Harris is blathering about sunshine and rainbows, the cost of bread, ground beef, rent, and gas has gone completely bonkers. We're talking price hikes that would make your wallet weep. Over 30% for bread and beef. Jesus.
And what's genuinely infuriating here, or at least what Capito was hammering, is the stark contrast between that political spin and the reality most people are facing.
Yeah, the numbers were brutal.
She highlighted that West Virginians are forking over an extra $889 a month just for the basics. That's over $10,000 a year, vanished into thin air. It's a figure that screams louder than any political slogan.
Damn right it does. And these clowns keep chirping about how inflation is slowing down. Slowing down my ass.
Right. Like, that helps now.
The prices are still sky high. It's like getting kicked in the teeth repeatedly. And then they tell you, hey, good news, next time we'll only kick you twice.
Yeah.
It doesn't exactly fill you with joy, does it? The rate slowing doesn't undo the fact that everything costs a fortune now.
It's a crucial point, really. Economists can talk about percentages all they want, but for the average person, the bottom line is that their money doesn't go as far. That fundamental squeeze on household budgets is what resonates, not some abstract statistical trend.
Exactly. Okay, now let's dive into some media melodrama. Remember that 60 Minutes interview?
Oh yeah, the Trump lawsuit one?
That's the one. Turns out the Orange Menace threw a hissy fit and launched some ridiculous lawsuit at CBS claiming they twisted his words.
Yeah.
And the FCC, bless their bureaucratic souls, even got involved demanding the uncut version. Live Now from FOX was all over this like flies on shit.
Well, this whole saga raises a maybe pretty valid question about how the media shapes narratives through editing. I mean, it happens, right?
Oh, constantly.
CBS, naturally, lawyered up, released the transcripts, and insisted they were just doing their job, the usual blah blah about editing for time, constraints, clarity.
Bullshit detectors off the charts on that one. I mean, who trusts these talking heads anyway? But here's the juicy bit. Apparently, the question about whether Netanyahu is actually listening to the Biden-Harris administration got two different lengths of answers aired on 60 Minutes and Face the Nation.
Interesting. So different edits for different shows.
Yep. CBS swears both versions captured the essence of her response, whatever the hell that means.
The devil's in the details, though, isn't it? Even if the core message supposedly remained, did the editing potentially soften her stance or maybe make her seem less assertive? These are the subtle ways narratives can be tweaked, fueling the ever-present accusations of bias and manipulation. It just feeds the fire.
Totally. Speaking of perceptions, let's peek at the poll numbers. Newsweek, surprisingly, did some actual reporting and found that Harris is in a worse spot against Trump with swing voters now than Biden was 4 years ago. That's got to sting like a bitch.
Ouch. Yeah, the data doesn't lie. While some national polls give her, a razor-thin lead, maybe?
Emphasis on maybe.
Trump is currently ahead in those crucial battleground states. Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. Those are the ones that'll decide the whole damn thing.
Exactly. And the kicker, her national lead, even where she has one, is smaller than what Clinton and Biden had at the same point in their races. It's not just a bad sign. That's a goddamn flashing red warning light. What the fuck is going on there?
It suggests a real struggle, maybe, to connect with key demographics or just a significant headwind she's facing that previous Democratic candidates didn't have quite this bad at this stage. Keeping an eye on those swing voter numbers would be absolutely critical.
No shit. All right, let's get into this whole code-switching circus.
Yeah.
The Cato Institute, surprisingly enough, had a somewhat sane take on it. Apparently, Harris gets hammered for talking differently depending on who she's talking to.
Uh-huh.
You know, dropping some ebonics in Atlanta and then sounding like a damn robot in D.C.
Right. And what's twisted about this, or maybe just predictable, is how both sides of the political spectrum get their panties in a bunch about it, just for different reasons.
Always. How does that work?
Well, conservatives screech about it being inauthentic, pandering, while some on the left see the need to code switch as some kind of oppressive demand for non-white folks to talk white. It's all so exhausting.
It really is. But the Cato piece, and I gotta say I agree with this for once, argues it's just basic communication skills. Like, duh. If you want people to listen to you, you speak their language. It's called adapting to your audience, something any politician with half a brain should be doing.
Precisely. They frame it as effective rhetoric, a practical tool in a diverse society. This whole obsession with some rigid idea of authenticity in language, it just ignores the fact that communication is about connection and understanding. Sometimes that means adjusting your delivery. It's not rocket science.
Exactly. Now let's talk about some genuine vitriol. Kevin O'Leary, that shiny-headed capitalist from Shark Tank.
Mr. Wonderful himself.
Called Harris a broken candidate with no compassion in the Express Tribune. Ouch, doesn't even cover it. That's fucking brutal.
O'Leary didn't mince words, did he? He slammed the Democratic Party for basically handing her the nomination without a primary, calling it a massive screw-up.
A huge mistake, yeah.
He pointed to her past stumbles, like her own presidential run fizzling out, and the general perception that she hasn't really made much of an impact as vice president.
He even dragged up that car crash of an appearance on The View, where she couldn't explain how she'd do things differently from Biden. Remember that? Just blanked. O'Leary basically declared her politically dead, and he even threw in some conspiracy theory about Pelosi pulling strings behind the scenes. Typical O'Leary asshole stuff, but still harsh.
His perspective reflects a pretty common criticism of the political establishment, right? This idea of anointed successors who haven't really earned their stripes through a tough primary process. The broken candidate label is incredibly harsh, but it taps into a sentiment that maybe she hasn't quite lived up to expectations for some people.
Understatement. Okay, this next one. This whole anti-woke language, witch hunt, reported in the New York Post. Seriously, what the fuck? Apparently, Harris had intelligence chiefs sifting through briefings looking for anti-woke language. You cannot make this shit up.
Yeah, that story was a something.
Yeah.
The report paints a picture of an administration maybe hyper-focused on DEI to the point where it's apparently influencing how intelligence briefings are worded.
Priorities, right?
The alleged concern about adjectives used for female versus male world leaders just screams of misplaced priorities, especially when you look at, well, the actual global crises brewing.
While the world's on fire, she's worried about adjectives. They found some questionable word choices, but no actual pattern of bias. Shocker. Big waste of time. But wait, there's more. She was also supposedly obsessed with breaking down COVID vax stats by race and wanted hurricane relief handed out based on equity.
Well, this aligns with a broader push for equitable outcomes across various policy areas, which is, stated goal. However, focusing on language in intelligence briefings, especially when real threats are out there, that looks pretty ridiculous to a lot of people. And the equity comment regarding disaster relief, that really set off the woke mob alarm bells for critics and fueled accusations of identity politics gone wild. Big backlash on that one.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, let's wade through the goddamn swamp that is the full 60 Minutes transcript. It's longer than my first marriage, but there are some gems buried in there, I guess.
Or landmines.
Exactly. On the Middle East, it's the usual predictable drivel. Israel's got the right to defend itself, blah, blah, blah. The war needs to end, more blah, blah, blah. We're talking Netanyahu, even though he's clearly ignoring us. And the oh-so-sacred U.S.-Israel alliance, snooze fest.
Even within that predictable script, though, there were a few nods to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. I mean, she acknowledged the far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed and stated that this war has to end. Those are carefully chosen words trying to balance support for Israel with, an awareness of the global outrage.
Carefully chosen bullshit, maybe. On the economy, she actually admitted that grocery prices are insane, 25% higher, apparently.
Finally, some acknowledgement.
But then spouted the same old low unemployment and strong economy horseshit based on macro numbers nobody feels. Her brilliant plan to fix grocery prices, a federal ban on price gouging. Yeah, good luck with that tackling corporate greed. What a joke.
Right. Is that even enforceable?
And of course, she wants to expand the child tax credit and give more tax breaks. Guess who's footing the bill? The mythical rich people, naturally. Always the same answer.
Her economic proposals, I mean, they sound good on paper to certain voters, sure, but they come with a hefty price tag. Like $3 trillion added to the deficit over a decade, according to estimates.
Jesus Christ.
The big question is whether these investments will actually stimulate enough economic growth to offset that cost, and whether her tax the rich plan is realistic or just, political grandstanding.
And get this, a quarter of registered voters still have no freaking clue who she is. After all this time in the spotlight, how is that even possible? Her excuse, it's an election and I have to earn every vote. Well, no shit, Sherlock. What else are you going to do?
Yeah, that was a bit of a non-answer.
And she got hammered on her flip-flopping. Fracking, immigration, Medicare for all. Her excuse, she's just been listening to folks and finding common ground without, actually having any firm beliefs. Just shifts with the wind.
Well, the perception of shifting positions is a classic attack line for long-serving politicians, right? Harris tries to spin it as pragmatism and a willingness to compromise, but yeah, it often comes across as a lack of core principles or just plain political expediency. Makes her look weak.
Totally weak. Immigration, what a complete clusterfuck. She visited the border, suddenly loves Biden's tougher stance, and then claims border crossings are down by half, conveniently forgetting the first few years where it was basically a welcome party.
The numbers did go down after the policy changes, but yeah, the initial period was chaotic.
She blamed Trump for killing some bipartisan bill, which, okay, he did, but wouldn't admit that maybe, just maybe, their initial open-door policies were a fucking disaster. And the hypocrisy, accusing Trump of racist tropes and then campaigning with Liz Cheney. You can't make this stuff up. What is that?
Immigration is clearly a massive vulnerability for this administration. The sheer volume of border crossings early on and the political fallout have been significant. Her attempts to reconcile past statements with current policies are unlikely to sway those who see the border situation as a full-blown crisis.
No way.
And the Cheney alliance. That's pure political maneuvering that will likely alienate as many progressive voters as it attracts conservatives, maybe. It's a weird tightrope walk.
A weird, failing tightrope walk. Okay, Trump, never one to miss a chance to spew bile. Call her grossly incompetent with very low IQ, according to the Economic Times. Classy as always.
Standard Trump playbook.
And that snarky AI chimed in, labeling her and her buddies as pathetic and saying they don't know anything. Subtle as a brick to the face, as always from that thing.
Yeah, Trump's strategy often revolves around these kinds of personal attacks and simplistic labels. While it fires up his base, it doesn't really offer any substantive policy critique, does it?
Not even close. And speaking of that snarky AI, that digital bastard was on fire. It mocked her nothing comes to mind answer when asked what she'd do differently than Biden.
Oh, God,
suggesting that should be her campaign slogan. Brutal. It said watching her interviews is like performing a lobotomy on yourself and that she struggles with the easiest softball questions. It even caught some transcription error about Nobel lawyers instead of noble lawyers. Hilarious screw-up.
The AI's commentary, while obviously vicious and designed to be snarky, does echo some common criticisms you hear, right? A perceived lack of clarity and maybe depth in her communication, and a tendency to rely on vague talking points rather than concrete policy details. That nothing comes to mind soundbite has definitely become a symbol of those criticisms. It was bad.
It was fucking terrible. Then there was the gem about young voters aged 18-24 being stupid. Apparently she said that. Charming.
Yeah, that comment surfaced again. Not a great look.
Accusations of being socially awkward, like telling people to cheer for themselves at a rally in Michigan. More with that. And let's not forget the legendary Find the Ability at This Moment video. Pure gold.
Cringe level maximum.
And the utterly baffling elephant anecdote from her supposed comeback speech that AI had an absolute field day ripping her to shreds on Fox News.
These moments, whether they're blown out of proportion or genuinely awkward, they definitely contribute to a narrative of a candidate who maybe struggles to connect with voters on a personal level and whose public appearances can sometimes be pretty cringeworthy. The elephant anecdote in particular just seemed bizarre and became instant meme fodder. Nobody understood it.
Nobody. Okay, now for a slightly more intellectual take, if you can call it that. Berkeley News did a deep dive on bias against powerful middle-aged women, and guess what? They say Harris is getting slammed by it. Surprise, surprise.
Okay, let's hear this angle.
Apparently, society expects women to be all warm and fuzzy, and when they actually achieve something, get some agency, they get punished for not fitting that mold. Less likable, less hireable, lower performance reviews, the whole goddamn shebang.
This analysis offers a crucial perspective on the criticisms Harris faces, doesn't it? It suggests that successful women in leadership often navigate this minefield of societal expectations, where competence can be perceived as coldness and ambition as aggression. It's the old double bind.
They predict the Trump campaign will weaponize these stereotypes, calling her a DEI hire, downplaying her achievements, saying she lacks gravitas, painting her as manipulative. Even just using her first name, Kamala, instead of Vice President Harris, is apparently a tactic to diminish her. Sneaky bastards.
The Berkeley analysis highlights the subtle but potent ways in which gender bias can play out in political discourse. The focus on personality over qualifications, the use of informal names, the activation of negative stereotypes, it can all erode a female candidate's standing, regardless of her actual record. It's something to consider.
Maybe. And finally, City Journal pondered Trump, Harris, and the IQ question. They quoted Trump and Tucker Carlson calling her dumb as a rock, naturally.
Of course they did.
The article actually argues that while intelligence is important, being too smart can backfire if you can't connect with regular folks. They think there's a sweet spot, like around the 90th percentile for leaders.
An optimal intelligence level.
Okay. Yeah. Weird theory. Their take. It's not her IQ that's the problem. It's her inability to relate to ordinary people, pointing again to that Michigan rally disaster where she told people to clap for themselves.
So this perspective shifts the focus from intellectual capacity to emotional intelligence and the crucial ability to connect with a broad electorate. Trump, despite his own verbal gaffes and everything else, often excels at projecting some kind of weird relatability, something Harris seems to struggle with, according to this piece.
Big time struggle. And to cap it all off, Fox News grilled Harris on Special Report. Bret Baier went hard.
Oh, I saw clips of that in tests.
Immigration was the main event. The number of illegals flooding across the border, the reversal of Trump's policies like remain in Mexico, the tragic consequences like murders committed by people released. She stuck to the broken system mantra and blamed Trump for killing that bipartisan bill.
The standard deflections.
Bret Baier basically cornered her on whether she owed the victims' families an apology. She gave the usual slimy politician answer, expressing sympathy but deflecting blame, talking about the bill again. Total dodge.
Yeah, that's a tough question for any politician in that spot.
Then he hit her with the Border Patrol Union endorsing Trump and calling her a complete failure on border security. Ouch. And they dug up her old stances from like 5 years ago on giving driver's licenses and free health care to illegals.
What was her answer to that?
Basically, that was 5 years ago. I follow the law now. Real convincing. And of course, that stupid comment about 18, 24-year-olds reared its ugly head again. What an absolute mess of an interview for her.
Yeah, the special report interview really highlighted the deep-seated anger and frustration surrounding the immigration issue and the significant challenge Harris faces in defending the administration's record. Her attempts to pivot to legislative solutions kept running into the brick wall of past policy decisions and the very real, tragic human consequences at the border. It looked bad.
Looked like shit. So there you have it, folks. A glorious, steaming pile of opinions, accusations, and outright insults hurled at Kamala Harris, all lovingly curated from the internet's finest garbage heaps.
Quite the collection.
From economic woes and media spin to claims of inauthenticity, code-switching craziness, and just plain social ineptitude, it's a goddamn roller coaster of bad press and harsh takes.
And this deep dive really aimed to wade through that noise and highlight the key criticisms and the often contradictory narratives that shape the public's understanding or maybe misunderstanding of Kamala Harris's political standing and her public image. It's complex.
Complex is one word for it. A fucking mess is another. And now, you magnificent bastards, the million-dollar question. After slogging through all this snark, spin, and flat-out lies and maybe some truths, what's your gut feeling about Kamala Harris and the absolute shitstorm of opinions surrounding her?
Yeah, what's your takeaway?
Go chew on that. Maybe even dive into these sources yourself if you're feeling particularly twisted. Until next time, you beautiful messed up bunch.